We come back from the hospital with this little baby, so adorable, just to realize that the baby doesn't come with a parent manual. And then just in a blink of an eye, the baby becomes a toddler, an active preschooler, and ends up being a rebellious teenager. So then you start thinking, well, who do I call for advice? And probably you're calling your mother or your grandmothers just to receive the same advices that they got from their parents. But in Raising Innovators, one of our goals is to actually give us some tips on how to become your child's first teacher. And today we have a very great question to unpack. How can we incorporate learning and become the teachers of our children in everyday tasks? And to answer and unpack this question, I brought one of my dearest friends in the world, Dr. Debby Mitchell. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so very much. I'm excited to be here.
We're going to have fun today.
Well, I always have fun with you, Marnie.
Well, we always have fun, but we have to start telling the audience how we met.
Oh my goodness. How long ago was that?
Wow. That's like maybe 15 to 18
at least.
years.
She is my sister, even though I'm the older sister, or I'd like to say the smarter sister, or the older sister.
No. Well, we met through Caroline Dykes at UCF, and it was like instant love. I loved her at the moment because we share the same passion for making education better for kids. And one of the things that we were so passionate about, it was to disrupt the way children learn. I remember I was in a franchise that practiced direct instruction. And I always remember talking to you who had studied education. I was like, how are these kids learning this way? This is like so antiquated and outdated.
So very true. And I am an example because when I was growing up, I was a kinesthetic learner. They wanted me to sit still and not talk. Now, can you imagine that for me? So I needed my learning disrupted, and it didn't happen through my formative years. So as I became an adult, I realized that we needed to do things different for our children.
Absolutely. And that's what started like Young Innovators and our journey. So we first started saying like children need to stop learning the way they're learning. Unfortunately, there's so many childcare centers that are either too play-based without the intentionality of learning, or they're strict and asking children to stay in their like desk and do worksheets or color between.
Nothing creative. Nothing creative.
And a lot of research is talking about that is exactly what children we shouldn't be doing, because we're not raising kids that are going to work in a factory line or in the industrial revolution. Kids need other skills. And that's how we started working together and putting the curriculum. So the first curriculum that we work with was about STEM.
Oh, and that was so exciting for me because you had the integration, you had the multisensory learning, which is what children need.
So when we started talking about incorporating these lessons on science, technology, engineering, and math, we started encountering like, oh, this is great. So we put a whole program together and trying to get children excited about the careers in STEM. And at the same time, my daughter, you remember my daughter and my son were graduating from high school. I want you to be a STEM because that's going to be the career of the future. And neither of them wanted to go in a STEM career because they were not passionate about it. And that's when we start like, oh my God, this STEM approach is good for some kids. I mean, of course, the world is going to have a lot of technology, but all kids are going to raise in this new era are like that, right?
Well, let me also mention, because I've now had several generations that I've taught. The thing that I noticed previously in the last couple of generations is they don't know how to create. They need you to tell them exactly what to do. They don't know how to problem solve. So all of a sudden, we had this group of children that you had to hand feed the information. And they had lost some of their curiosity by the time they got to grade school.
Well, they know how to research it, right? Because they can, like Google, can you tell me this, right? But they have lost that capacity to create or read. That's so interesting.
So this is what we decided that we needed to do, is to help children use their curiosity, use their environment, use those things that they enjoy to help them learn.
And then we built something wonderful together. That is the innovation advantage. Do you want to tell a little bit about it and the pillars?
Well, we have the innovation advantage is trying to help children know that they can be innovators. We use their curiosity. We use the open-ended questions to find out more information. And most of all, we try to solve a problem. So with this problem, they have to be innovators in trying to figure out, and we use a method, and I would like to talk about it if we can, and we call it, do you remember what it is? CAPE.
Yes.
So we have the three pillars, and then we have the 4 steps of CAPE.
So the first one is a challenge.
Challenge. So the first one is challenge. And so we do that by giving them a problem or a situation that they need to solve. And then the next one is A.
Analyze.
Analyze. See, she's smart. You knew that, didn't you? So then we're going to look at all the things that have happened before. We're going to analyze the information that we know. We're going to figure out what we need to find out more information about. And we might even start coming up with some ideas of how we could solve it or a prototype that we might fix, which is the next one. Produce. So we're going to produce something, a prototype, an example, a drawing, something that will show what our thinking is at that point on how we can solve the problem. And so we're going to do all the hands-on activities before we do the E, which is evaluate.
Okay.
And see if we need to change something, do something differently. But with this CAPE strategy and being an innovator, it has changed the way young children go about learning.
Well, so let's unpack that because there's a lot of information. And the goal of this podcast is to show parents how they can also do this at home because it's very easy. Parents are definitely the child's first teacher, and they can incorporate learning into everything you do using these frameworks and others that we're going to share today. So let's talk about how can parents like develop and encourage this type of environment in their household?
Well, you remember how children learn best, and they learn best from their environment, hands-on experiences. So everything in their environment is a learning situation. So if they're playing with the sand, you can talk about the sand. How does it feel? Is it hot? Is it cold? What could you do with the sand? If they're talking about peas, what color are they? What shape are they? What do they taste like? But then you want to start getting a little more complex with situations and things they can solve. One of the things I remember with my grandson when I used to babysit is I had a round circle, and we talked about if that was a pipe, how will we know what things could fit through that pipe? Well, he spent 30 minutes running around the house seeing all the different items he could stick through that pipe. Well, that wasn't a toy. That was just something he was interested in because he liked shapes and sizes and numbers. And so you use what's ever in your environment and that they're doing or they're interested in to spark that interest with questions and challenges.
Well, you know, one of the biggest breakthroughs of my life was when I discovered that I didn't need to have all the answers to the questions.
Oh, yes.
Because that's one of the misconceptions that parents have that, you know, because we're used to it and probably our parents didn't like, they gave us an answer, even if it was the wrong answer, they probably said, oh, you know, like, oh, where is the moon or whatever question. Why is the sky blue? And that the parents, they just made up an excuse, or maybe they
made up something.
Right, they made up something.
It's blue, just like the water.
Right, like yeah, whatever you come up with. But this was one of the biggest achievements was when I discovered that I didn't have to know the answers. Actually, it was not okay to give an answer to a child. That was so empowering for me, right? Because there were a lot of topics that my children were interested that I was not.
But you say it's empowering for you. It's also empowering for the child.
And also the child. So it's a two-way street, right? And it was an opportunity to learn. And I realized something when I discovered that. Like, I remember there are a couple of like subjects that I really wasn't good at. Like chemistry, for example. I didn't like chemistry at all. And you know how I passed those classes?
No, I'd like to know the secret.
I memorized everything one day before, but ask me something about chemistry. I mean, I don't remember.
You didn't really learn it.
I didn't learn it.
It wasn't integrated into your brain.
No, I never had an experience with chemistry or I never had an interest in that subject. And there were a couple of others, but I was really bad at that one. And And that's what happens when you only teach for standardized testing and stuff like that. And that's the difference of what we're showing kids.
Well, you also bring up another point in that that's also what happens when you teach just one subject at a time and you don't have multidisciplinary, which most jobs require. If you have an architect, he has to know math, has to know engineering, has to know the technology that goes along with it, has to know the science or perhaps physics and all of those different items. And if it's taught in isolation, your brain doesn't integrate the learning as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's great. For example, I would have been more interested learning about chemistry if it would have involved maybe making something or
If you actually saw a demonstration, you had some hands-on activities, things to actually see it working. What's a chemical reaction? Well, if you can see a chemical reaction, then you'd understand it better.
Well, too late for me to learn chemistry.
But not too late for the kids.
Not too late for the kids. But so let's go over. So the role of the parent is just to ask that question or to give a challenge, which is the first letter of the 4 steps.
And the thing that you really want to do, though, is to have open-ended questions and not give them the answers. You want to give them opportunities to think about what you're asking. So you might say, what color is this? Well, this color is blue. Instead, you might say, what can you tell me about this? And they might tell you it's blue, that it's this shape, that it's this texture. So you want to ask open-ended questions so that their learning will be more full.
Absolutely. And one of the suggestions, sometimes some parents in the school have talked about maybe having a board in the house with questions that they couldn't answer, but then they could start an investigation with their child or maybe just explore further or go to the library or go to the science museum or something like that. But they had these part questions that would ignite that exploration. So the first step is give them a challenge.
Give them a challenge, ask them questions.
And then let's go through the second stage.
Well, you want to give them hands-on experiences. So for example, if they're interested about shadows, tell me what you know about shadows. Then we go outside and we look at shadows, see what different ways we can make shadows. Where are there shadows? Why are shadows important? Why is light and dark different? Why do you have those things in our environment? Oh. And then from there, you do the research, and then you might come up with something, well, what can we make that will give us shadow, that will give us shade for our plants for part of the day so They won't get too much sun?
And in that step of the process, the A of the CAPE strategy, we can also read books or maybe watch a video about shadows and just maybe interview somebody that knows a lot about shadows or go to
about the weather if it's going to be geared towards protecting your plants. If that was the initial problem, was what can we do to protect our plants? And then it gets into a discussion of shadows. Then you might do research about what plants need, what shadows need, what's light and dark, why is it needed? So you're going to do the problem and do that analysis.
And then after that, you solve and you find you have information, and then there's a prototype that you want to create. You came up with an original solution. And the problem with education is that kids are not coming up.
They're not coming up with solutions. And they think outside of the box. They don't have the same parameters that adults have because of their environment and experiences in the past. They're a clean slate.
I love them. So they're free to create something. So let's go over that step of the process where they create something that is original. How would that look like?
Well, and depending on the age, they might first draw it. They might first make a model out of twigs and paper. They might use their blocks. You give them a variety of substances and materials and things to make their prototype and see what they do and ask them questions. Oh, what is this? Why did you put this part on? What part is this going to do? So they start even thinking about the parts of their product.
I love that. And then at the end, we evaluate. So, and that step is about engaging the child, the creator, with a presentation.
They present, how does it work?
I love it. Yes.
Show me how your product works. And they give you this full description. They're so proud. They're so excited about what they made.
And this is beautiful because you can make, then you will be seeing opportunities to learn everywhere. When you go to the supermarket, or when you go to the school, or when you go wherever you go to the doctor, you can still write your child's questions and turn them into challenges, and then just go into a discovery.
As a matter of fact, we as parents can use this all the time when we're trying to solve a problem with our child. And what can we do about getting you to bed earlier? What could we do? What is the problem? Well, the problem is that you're distracted by so many toys. Well, what could we make to put our toys in so they wouldn't be a distraction? Just simple things that you could involve the child with in that CAPE process. And I want to mention that I like to use the idea of a CAPE with a superhero, that you're a superhero of solving problems.
We are. Children are superheroes solving problems. So one of the things, how can parents find more information about how to develop these activities?
Well, Marnie and I were very fortunate to write Simple STEAM. We also integrated the arts as well as the science, technology, engineering, and math. And the arts are also included. So this gives many different opportunities for you to do things with your children.
And this is just a starting point for the parents. And we're going to give a promotion to our publisher, a Griffin House, and to Kaplan Early Learning. This book, we're super proud of this. It won like the Teacher of the Year. It won so many awards, and it was recognized. It's for parents.
It's for parents, and the activities, the questions they can ask with examples.
And this is the Young Innovators team. These pictures are from children from the school. And you can have like so many like ideas on how to do from every like domain, from science, technology, engineering, or math, but they're integrated.
And some things that we should talk about is that we want them to use the vocabulary. So during this whole process, you introduce them to words and discuss those words and use them in their research, in their prototypes, so that they're learning that vocabulary. We also get where we want them to make predictions and hypothesize. What do you think will happen with your product? What do we need to do differently if you were to make it again? So that they start really thinking about their whole process.
This is a good book. And I love that when we wrote it, it was integrated with the arts and with other types of activities, extended learning, because sometimes you start like working with a child and they're so interested in that topic that they don't want to end it.
They don't want to stop.
And then the parents like, what can I do? What can I do? How can I keep the learning going at home and do that? Well, this book is just like a launch pad to start engaging your child with this type of challenges, type of activities, with different type of situations, including even one of my favorite ones was like, in the art, you have the shadows.
Yes.
But one of my favorite was like just going to the farmer's market with your child, and how do you engage them? How do you start an exploration to learn what fruits are from vegetables? I mean, which one was your favorite one?
I like the rocket. And of course, the toothpaste one where you had a chemical reaction. Talking about your chemistry.
Oh my God.
If you had done that as a child, it would have made a lot more, or even as an older high school person, it would have made sense to you.
You know, I have to confess that I've actually learned so much about science and engineering math by writing lesson plans for children because it kind of goes down to my level.
Yes, it's so true.
When I started writing them, I'm like, well, you know what? I have no idea about a lot of these topics. And some of the kids at the schools were so interested about topics that I have never heard of.
Oh, I know. And they're so creative.
Yeah. But the questions are getting these kids are getting smarter, these new generations, because they have all these phones and access to information. But I remember one child asking me about rockets or things that, wow, I mean,
I got to go do some research on this.
How does that work, really? But this is just a launch pad. And the mission of the Raising Innovators podcast is to actually work with parents in our communities and around the world in teaching them how to become the parents, your child's first teacher. Engage them in conversations that are interested so that you can help us raise the next generation of innovators. Join us on a mission and on a movement to raise the next generation of innovators. Thank you so much,
Thank
Debbie,
you
for
very
being
much.
in the show.
I really enjoyed
It's
it.
going to be an unforgettable episode.
I hope so.
Yes. Thank you so much for watching. And if you like this and if you're excited about keep on learning with us, just subscribe to our YouTube channel, share it with your friends, and let's keep on raising the next generation of innovators.